Alright, welcome. So today we'll be making a React Notes app. Now in this Notes app, we'll be able to create notes, you'll be able to delete notes, you'll be able to view the notes that you have created, and this will just be a front-end application. So if we refresh the page, the notes will disappear. Alright, so some prerequisites you're going to have to need to make this application is you're going to have knowledge of HTML, knowledge of CSS, and knowledge of JavaScript, also known as ES6, also known as vanilla JavaScript. You're also going to have a basic knowledge of React. So you should know state, functional components, and how to make hooks. If you want to, you can have a knowledge of Bootstrap, because that's what I'm going to be using in this tutorial. And also another optional requisite is React Bootstrap, and that's also what I'm going to be using to style. And we need to download React, React DOM, React Bootstrap, React Router DOM, which I'll be teaching you in this tutorial, and React Router Bootstrap. And React Bootstrap and React Router Bootstrap are both optional. You don't have to download them. I'll just be using them to style in this tutorial. You can use plain CSS if you want to. Alright, that's the introduction. Let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do, I'm going to be using the terminal in Visual Studio Code, but you can just use the terminal or command prompt if you're on Windows. So the way I'm going to be creating this React app is I'm going to get into documents first of all. I'm going to cd, so that means I'm going to find the folder documents. I'm going to get into it, and then I'm going to do npx create React app, and we're going to call this Notes app. Alright, it's creating that. Alright, it's done. Now we're going to cd into the Notes app, the folder that we just created. And we're going to do npm start, and we're actually going to open the folder Notes app, which is in documents, Notes app, and we're going to open that up into Visual Studio Code. You can use any editor you want. I'll be using Visual Studio Code for this tutorial. Alright, while that opens up, I'm actually going to go into this source. I'm going to delete a few files. So I'm going to delete app.test.js. I'm going to delete index.css, this logo, and these two. So I only want these three files. Okay, and public, we're just going to have index.html. I'm just going to delete all these comments. Okay, I'm going to go to Google, and we're going to go to localhost 3000, and it's going to be loading in once the npm start is finished loading in. In the meantime, we're going to go to app.js, and we are going to just delete everything from here to here, and we're going to make this just an empty div like that. Okay, we're going to take away this. We don't want the logo since it doesn't exist anymore. And in index.js, we are going to remove that, and I'm going to remove react.strict mode, and of course we don't have this nor this. Okay, and let's open up terminal. Alright, the npm start didn't actually work, so I'm just going to run it one more time. Npm start. It's going to start the React application. Alright, now the server is up and running. We can look at it in localhost, and it is empty since we erased everything in app.js. Okay, so now the first thing I want to do is I want to make a screens folder. Now the screens folder is going to contain all the different screens that we're going to have. Since we're going to be using React Router, in the application there's going to be a navbar with the home screen, the notes screen where you can view all the notes, and the create screen. The home screen is not going to really do anything. It's just going to be like an about page. I'm just going to put random text in there. The notes page is just going to be an array, a mapped array of all the notes that we have created. The create screen is just going to be the place where that we're going to create the notes using two input fields for the title and the text. Okay, so I want to make a folder inside source called screens, and I also want to make another one called components. Components is going to have the navbar, which is the first thing we're going to create. It's also going to have each individual note. So the first thing I'm going to create is Navbar.js. Alright, and I'm going to do RAFCE. And what this does, this is an extension I downloaded. It's called like ES7 React Redux. This is the extension that I installed, and basically you can make React and ES7 and ES6 components really easily. So to make a full component, all I have to type is RAFC, and this will make an arrow function component, but it's exporting from here. I don't really like that, so I'm going to do RAFCE like that, and then it exports it from down there. Alright, so now we have the navbar component. We need to actually import it. So I'm going to just type in navbar, and it should have an auto import. There we go, auto import. And auto imported it from, actually we need to import React, so I forgot about that. And this should show nothing. It shouldn't show an error though. Okay, now if we have an h1 or something in the navbar file, save that and go over here, it should show header. Okay, so this is where React Bootstrap is going to come in. So React Bootstrap is a component-based way to make Bootstrap elements. So it's similar to React in that when you make an element using it, the code is actually a tag, a component tag with a capital first letter. And you import these tags, so this in this case is alert. You're going to import alert from React Bootstrap. Now, let's say I want a navbar. It can actually make the full navbar for me by just importing a few things. And this is why React Bootstrap is so powerful, but it's also not that customizable. So I'm just using it for this just because it's quick and easy. So this just makes a full navbar. So all I have to import is navbar nav, because I'm going to delete form, because anything that's after the dot is comes with the navbar. So I'm just going to copy paste this, place it in here. Now if you don't already have React Bootstrap downloaded, just create a new terminal tab and make sure that you're in the Notes app or whatever you named the folder, and do npm I or install React Bootstrap. I already have it installed, so I don't need to do that, but you just do that and that should install it for you. Alright, so now we're going to paste this in and we're going to save it, and it's going to auto format it. It's going to make a bug since we didn't import anything. I'm just going to delete this because we don't need that. I'm also going to delete the drop down. I don't want the drop down either. All I really want is this. This should be enough. We're also going to take away the href. We're going to name this notes. And now we're going to have to import from React Bootstrap. So we're importing nav and navbar from React Bootstrap. Seems it's not installed, so I'll actually just install it right now. While that's installing, I'm going to erase these hrefs. We don't need them. Now you can just make all this in plain JSX if you want to. I'm going to be using this since it styles automatically. The bug here in my code is actually not to do with React Bootstrap, and it's because I named navbar the same as the thing that I'm importing here, which you can't do. So I'm actually going to rename this to header, which is kind of a bother, but so that means we're going to have to rename the file to header. We don't have to, but I'm going to do it just to make it clean. And we also have to change the import here to header. Same thing here. And same thing here. Alright, so the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to download Bootswatch. So what Bootswatch is, it's basically like Bootstrap, except it sets a certain theme to Bootstrap. So Bootstrap has the default Bootstrap look, which if you know Bootstrap, you know what it looks like. If you don't, you could just look on the Bootstrap website. They're going to give you a component list of what it can do in terms of styling. But Bootswatch sets a different theme, any theme of your choice. So you're going to want to open a new terminal window, and you're going to want to run npm I Bootswatch. Make sure you're inside your React app, and you're going to want to run npm I Bootswatch. I already ran this, so I don't need to do it. After you run that, bootstrap.min should be downloaded, and you want to put this line at the top of your code. Import bootswatch/dist/ whatever you want the theme to be /bootstrap.min.css. So you can replace this with anything you want. There's a list of themes on the Bootwatch website. I'm going to be using the theme Lux. And if we save this, and if we go over here and refresh, it adds a really nice theme to our website. It centers the navbar, and it makes it look stylish. Another thing I added is in the header file, I want you to wrap the navbar in a container. As this centers the navbar, it centers it to the center of the screen. So you can just import container from React Bootstrap and wrap the navbar in a container. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create actually we're going to change this to the notes. And we're going to make one more link called the create. Okay. Create. So we're going to have the home page, the notes page, and the create page. Now we're actually going to create those pages. We're going to go over to screens, and we're going to do a new file, and we're going to have home.js. Alright, let's save this. And we have created these three new files. So I'm going to do RAFCE, like that. And that exports it from down there. I'm going to do that for all three of these. Save that. Same thing here. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to import these in app. So we're going to use the auto import feature. Alright, the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to start to create the router. So basically what React Router does is you can switch between each page very fast without the whole page reloading. It's called a single page application. So the first thing we want to do if we want to import, we have to import React Router. So let's make sure we have React Router installed first of all. So do I have it installed? I do. If you don't have it installed, you could just do npm I React Router DOM. Like that. I already have it installed, so I don't need to do that. Okay, so we're going to import browser router. And I'm going to import this as router, and the as keyword just changes browser router to router. So instead of typing out browser router, I only have to type out router. I'm going to wrap the app component in the router. And what this does is I can now access the router from anywhere inside the application. So if I just wrapped it around header.js, I can only access the router inside header.js. And let's save that. And okay. The next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to import it into app. So right under React, import. But we're not going to import browser router this time. This time we're going to import switch and route. Just route. From Alright. What the switch does is you basically wrap all the components that you want to route on certain routes. So what we're going to do here is whenever the page is /home, we're going to show this alongside with the header. The header is always going to be shown, which is the navbar. But when it's /home or just /, we're going to show the home page. When it's /notes, we're going to show the notes. And when it's /create, we're going to show the create. So we're going to want to type in switch here, like so. And each route, so the switch just wraps around all the routes that we do. And each route that we create, we have to set route path. So the path is what we're going to route when that path is true. So on a localhost, when it's localhost /notes, for example, it should show the notes page. We don't have it created yet, so we won't do that yet. So we're going to do path for the home. We're just going to do path /. So we're going to set So we're going to set the path to slash, and we are going to put the home component inside here, like so. Alright, now that the computer knows what to show when it's on a certain route, we have to actually change the route when we click these links. And this is where React Router Bootstrap comes in. So I'm actually going to install this because I haven't installed it yet. Alright, now that that's installed, we need to import link container. Normally in React Router you would just import link and you would wrap this in the link tag, but it doesn't look nice and I want to still keep the React Bootstrap. So this package combines React Router and React Bootstrap, and we use the link container instead of link. So we are going to wrap the nav.link in the link container, and to say what route we want to go to, we're just going to use the to parameter, and we're going to, for the home, we're going to put it to slash, and slash is just home. Alright, now that we're done that, I just want to test it. So I'm going to put an H1 in the create tab, and I'm just going to call this create tab, and let's try this out. Now this isn't going to work, and even if I refresh, it's not going to work. And the reason it doesn't work is because we didn't add the exact parameter. Now the way React Router works is it checks for the path, it checks for any path that starts with the path that you entered. So it's going to check for any path that starts for slash. So no matter what we type in notes and create, it's always going to show the home page if we don't add the exact. What the exact does is it just sets it to exactly what the path is. We don't have to add the exact to these two paths because there's no other path that starts with slash notes or slash create. But if we had a path that's slash notes slash something else, we would have to add the exact here also. So now if we try this and we refresh and we go to create, it shows the create tab. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create the home page. So the home page is going to be a very simple page with just one H1 that's going to say Notes app, and a paragraph that's going to say this is the best Notes app on the internet. And we're going to add a bit of margin to this. So this is a Bootstrap class, and we're going to set the margin to the top of the component, and we're going to set that margin to 3. So you can add a value from anywhere from 1 to 5. We're going to save this, and we're going to view this in the browser. Go to the home page. There we go. We're going to wrap this in a container tag so it's centered along with the navbar. Alright, now let's view this in the browser. There we go. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to the React Bootstrap website, which I'll leave a link to in the description. And we're going to copy paste this form here into our create page. Alright, and we're going to delete the text here. We're also going to delete the checkbox and the button. And we're going to have to import form from React Bootstrap. And there we go, we have a nice form here. I'm going to center this by adding a container tag. And I'm going to set a bit of margin here. We're going to set this margin to empty 3. And one more thing we're going to do is we're actually going to set the width of this to 50%. And there we go, we have a nice form, and we could type into it. And the last thing we're actually going to do is we're going to change this into text, title, set this type of text. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change this form into a controlled component. So what that means is any single time we type into one of these inputs, it's going to store the value of those inputs in state. So we're going to import the useState hook, and we're going to call this hook form. And we're going to set this to a default value of title to an empty string and text to an empty string. And I'll explain why in a sec. And we're going to set the value of this to form.title, since it's the title. And the same thing down here. And we're going to set a name of title and a name of text. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the function called handle change. And every single time we type into one of these components, it's going to run this function. So we need the onChange event listener. Alright, now that that's done, I'll explain what we need to do with all that we just did. So the way that the form, or the way that the function recognizes which component is being typed in is using the event property. And what the event property does is it sees which is being typed in by doing event.target. So if I call event.target here, it will know if I type into one of these boxes and I call event.target in the handle change, it will know which box is being typed in. So if we want a certain value, event.target.value, we can get that. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to destructure the value and the name properties from event.target. So value and name equals event.target. And we're going to set form to a new object, and this object is going to have everything that we didn't change. So let's just say we only changed the text. It's going to leave the title how it is by doing the ellipsis or the spread operator. So it's going to spread everything that's not changed, and the only thing it's going to change is the name, and it's going to set whatever the name is to the value. So I'll explain what this is happening here. So basically it's taking event.target.name from whatever is being typed in. So it's going to take this title, and it's as if I copy pasted this here, and since I'm putting the square brackets around it, it takes away the quotations. So now it's setting title, which is exactly the same thing here. It's setting the title to the value, and the value we set it to form.title. And so it's kind of a loop. So every single time we type in one of these, it's gonna set the form to whatever we're typing in, and so it stores the values in state. And now if we type in one of these, you're not going to see a visible difference, but if we console.log form, and let's refresh, and if we type, it automatically updates the state. And this is essential to creating the notes application, since every single time we click on the add note button, which we're going to create later, it's just going to add it to the notes page. Alright, the next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create the note state, which is going to be passed down to both the notes and the create pages. So we're going to need to import useState, and we're just going to call this state notes. We're going to set it to a default value of just an empty array. We're going to pass down just the notes in the notes page and the set notes in the set notes page in the create page. Alright, now we're going to need to take this from here. So we're going to just destructure it. So normally we would take props and then we would call props dot set notes or prop set notes, but we're just going to destructure it. So in the create, all we need is the set notes, and in the notes, all we need is the notes. So over here, we're going to do notes.map. I'm going to map out a function, and that function is going to hold a card. So the card we're going to be taking from the React Bootstrap website. Alright, now that we're here, we're going to search for cards. Alright, once you get to the React Bootstrap website, just search cards up here and you should find this. And we're just going to copy paste this. Alright, we're just going to delete the image and the button. And all we need is the title and the text. We're going to change this to, well, first we need to actually import the variable, which is going to be each note. Basically, the way .map works is the first parameter you have is going to be the elements in the array that you're mapping out. The second parameter would be the ID, and the third parameter would be the whole array. So all we need is the first, so we don't even need the brackets. We're going to call this note, and so over here we're going to take the note.title, and here is going to be the note.text. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the add note function. And that function is going to run every single time we click the add note button, which I'm going to create right now. So it's just going to be a button tag. And these are some Bootstrap classes, so I'm going to set it to button, button dark. Alright, let's view this. And there we go, we have a nice button. And we're going to do an on click of and add note. Alright, so in the add note function, we're going to set notes to a function. And that is going to be an arrow function, and we're going to set it notes. So we're going to set notes to an array, which is going to be ... note and whatever the form was. So every single entry is going to be an object, but whatever is already in the array, we're not going to erase it. We're just going to keep it, and we're going to add this to the end. And we're going to set form to an empty object. We're actually going to set it to this. So it goes back to an empty array, empty string. Oops, I made a bug here. Alright, let's view this. Now let's enter something in here. Click add note, and go over to notes. And there we go, we have the note over here. One thing we're going to do is we're going to center this. Alright, now we're going to add a bit of margin to the top of this card. Actually, to the top of this container. Let's set this margin to 3. Alright, that looks good. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the delete note functionality. To do that, we are going to need the Font Awesome icon library. And Font Awesome is an icon library that has many free icons. And the one we're going to be using is the trash can icon. So I'm going to go to fontawesome.com. And I'm going to click on icons. We're going to search trash can. I'm going to take one of the free ones. I think this one's free. And all we need to do is add this class. Now, to start using the icon, you need to either download Font Awesome into your source folder, or you can just take the Font Awesome link, and it's going to be a link to a CDN link. I'm going to leave it in the description, and you can just put a link tag like I am going to do right now. So let me take this link that I copied from over here, and let's put it into our index.html. We'll go over to index.html and replace this one. This is the same link, but I'm just going to show you how to do it. So I'm going to go like this, link, source, like that, and that's all you need. Save that. And let's see. Well, there shouldn't be no differences, but there shouldn't be an error, so that's good. And now let's use the icon. Alright, now let's go to the notes page. And we're going to add it right under the title. So it is an I tag, and the class name was, if I'm not mistaken, FAR trash. I'm just going to copy it. Copied. Yeah, FA trash, and we're just going to leave it empty, and that should be good. Let's save. Alright, let's view this. So let's create a note. And there you go, there's a trash can. Now I don't really like it in the middle between the title and the text. So I'm going to set a class name of float right. And this is just a bootstrap class. Instead of going into CSS, I'm just going to do it with bootstrap. Alright. And there we go. And on second thought, I'm actually going to put it on top of the title. So that way it's going to be on the same level as the title. If I put it below, it's going to be in between. So like that. And there we go, that looks good. Alright, now we need to actually add the functionality. So I was going to make it so if I hover on the component, the trash can is going to appear. But just to keep it simple, I'm just going to have the trash can be there all the time. And whenever we want to delete, we're just going to click the trash can. Alright, so let's add the functionality. So the first thing we're going to need to do is, since we already have the notes here, we're also going to need the set notes. So we're going to have to pass that down from app.js down to the notes. We only pass notes, so we have to pass set notes. Like so. And let's go over here. And what we need to do is we're going to create a function called delete note. Alright, inside here we're going to do the set notes, and inside the set notes we are going to have the notes.filter, and that filter is going to be the ID. So for the ID, I have a package called unique ID, and we're going to download that right now actually. And basically it just generates a unique ID every single time. I could have done that with JavaScript, but I wanted to use an external package to make it simpler. So we're going to do npm I unique ID. Make sure you're in the Notes app, not the source. Alright, now that that's installed, we are going to go to the Create tab. And when we create a note, we want to set the ID of that note. We want to set the ID of that note to a random ID. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to import unique ID from unique ID. And to use that, to use the unique ID, we just have to do unique ID and then put some brackets around it, and that's automatically going to give us a unique ID. Although it's going to give us a new one every single time, and we want to keep it constant. So to do that, we're going to create a state called ID. And we're going to set this by default to unique ID. And so the first time it's being created, it's going to set it to a random ID that's never been created before. Every single time the note is created, we want to set the ID to another unique ID. And we'll keep it like this for now. That should be good. So actually no, we need to add an ID up here. So every single time the handle changes, every single time we type something in, it's going to automatically add the ID to the form. And then when we import the form into the notes array, it's going to have the ID already inside of it. So the ID is going to be the third parameter. So there's going to be title, text, and ID. And let's save this. Let's go over to notes. And the ID should be already within the notes since it's going to be one of the parameters. And we're going to actually create a key because every single object needs a unique key. So we're going to use the ID for that. And we're going to use the CreateNote function, delete note functionality. So we're going to do hand or on click. I'm going to set this to delete note. And in the delete note, we are going to pass the ID. So the note ID, we're going to pass that in. We're going to take that in. We are going to do the notes.filter, and for every single note that we are filtering out, I want the note to be equal. I want the note, the ID of the note that we're looking for to be equal of the ID that was passed to us. So I'll explain how this works. So the way this works is, first of all, we are getting the ID that is passed to us down from the delete note. Oops, I made a mistake here. So the way this works is we're getting the ID of the note from the notes, and the notes we're getting it from when we create the note. We're setting the form to the ID that we originally set right when we refresh the page. So right when we refresh the page, when we go over to the create page, it's going to automatically set ID to a unique ID. And the second we start typing into one of the title or text components, it's going to add the ID to the note that we're typing in. And then once we press add note, it's going to set ID to a unique ID, and then it's going to add the ID to the form. And actually, we need to set the ID to the unique ID after we add it to the form. That's important. So the ID that we already created originally is going to stay, and then next time it's going to take this ID. So the next time we create a note, it's going to go kind of like a loop. It's going to add a new ID here, and so on. And I'm also going to add an if statement here, and that if statement is going to be if form.title or form.text equals nothing, or if form.title or form.text doesn't equal nothing, then do this, only that. And we could send a message that's going to say like that you forgot to fill in one of the fields, but we're just going to leave it like this. It's just not going to work if they try to create a note empty. And this should work. Actually, we need to do it like this. Yeah, so we need to have the not equals for both the title and the text. So if they try to create a note without a title or a text, or without both of them, it's not going to work. Let's save this. Let's go over to the notes, and this should work. And we don't need this hovered state. Let's save this. Let's view this in the browser. And let's create a note. So this is my last note, and I love this notes app. Alright, don't mind the spelling mistakes. Add note. Let's go over to notes. This is my last note. Let's create one more note just to differentiate between them. I love notes. I love them. Whatever. Add note. And now we have the two notes. And if we want to delete one of them, we just click the garbage can and it goes away. And that is a fully working notes app. Now, there are multiple things you can add. One of them I just mentioned is if they try to add a note that's empty, it's not going to create a note, but it's also going to send a message or an alert saying you forgot to fill in a field. Another addition is to add it so that once you, let me create a note real quick. Only when you hover over the component, the trash can is going to appear. So there are multiple ways you can go around doing this. This can be infinitely expanded. And I'm also planning to create a backend tutorial on how to do this. So how to add the MERN stack to this using MongoDB, Express, React, and Node. And even if we refresh the page, the notes are going to be loaded in from the database, and we're going to import them back, or we're going to get them back from the database. And every single time we create a note, it's going to create it. It's going to create it and send it to the database, and vice versa. When we delete a note, it's going to delete it from the database. And everything's going to be on the cloud. We're going to be using MongoDB Atlas. And that's like basically the full extent of a notes app. It's also going to have the ability to edit the notes, so you can change them anytime you want. And that's basically the full extent of what a notes app can do. You can make it more complicated, changing font sizes and colors. But for a really simple notes app, this is as far as we're going to go for today. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.